The gateway station hummed with its usual rhythm of interstellar commerce and diplomatic exchanges. Species from across the Galactic Council mingled in its corridors, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and synthesized translations. But in the security wing, an unusual silence had fallen. Security Chief Draal's four eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of deep confusion among his kind. Before him, through the reinforced transparent barrier, sat three Kriveth cubs. The predatory species, known throughout the galaxy for their ferocity and territorial nature, had their young ones positioned directly beside the external gate entrance. They weren't pacing. They weren't playing. They simply sat, their crystalline eyes fixed on every person who approached the scanners. "This is unprecedented," Draal muttered, his chitinous fingers tapping against his datapad. "In 15 cycles of operation, we've never had any species refuse to pass through the security checkpoint." He turned to Lieutenant Mara Quinn, the human liaison officer who had arrived 6 months ago. "Lieutenant, your companions are creating a bottleneck. Several delegations have expressed concern." Mara stood with her arms crossed, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Her brown eyes held that peculiar warmth that Draal had come to associate with humanity's most dangerous trait, their ability to befriend the unbefriendable. "They don't trust your scanners yet," she said simply. "Don't trust," Draal's translator hiccuped, struggling with the concept. "The scanners are calibrated to Council standards. They've been certified by 17 different species. They're mathematically incapable of causing harm. Math doesn't mean much to them, Chief." Mara walked closer to the barrier, and immediately, all three cubs' ears perked up. The largest one, which Mara had named Razor, made a soft chirping sound. "They're babies, Draal, barely 4 months old in human terms. Everything is new, everything is potentially dangerous." Draal's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Then why bring them to a security checkpoint at all? The Kriveth delegation has their own quarters. These cubs should be with their parents, not doing whatever this is." "Their parents tried." Mara's voice took on a softer tone. "For 2 weeks they tried. But Kriveth cubs imprint on whoever saves their life first. I pulled them out of that hull breach on the transport ship, so now," she gestured at the cubs, who had arranged themselves in a protective triangle formation. "I'm Mom." The security chief had heard this story, of course. Everyone on Gateway Station had. During the cubs' transport to the station, a cascade failure had vented 3 cargo sections into space. Lieutenant Quinn had been conducting a routine inspection when it happened. Without hesitation, she'd sealed herself in the failing section, manually overridden the emergency locks, and pushed all 3 cubs into an escape pod before the hull gave way completely. She'd survived by sheer luck, caught by the pod's emergency tether. "Imprinting is one matter," Draal said, pulling himself back to the present crisis. "But this is a security protocol violation. They cannot remain here indefinitely. They're not planning to." Mara checked her chronometer. "We've been here for 47 minutes. That's 11 minutes longer than yesterday." "Yesterday? This happened yesterday? And the day before? And the day before that?" Mara's smile widened. "We're making progress, Chief. First day they wouldn't let me within 10 meters of the scanners. Razor actually bit through 2 security drones." Draal's translator made a sound like a sigh, though his species didn't breathe in the traditional sense. "So you're, what, socializing them to accept Council technology?" "Exactly." Mara knelt down, bringing herself to the cub's eye level despite the barrier between them. "Humans learned a long time ago, Chief. You can't force trust. You can't logic someone into feeling safe. You have to show them repeatedly that the scary thing won't hurt them." As if on cue, a Velthian merchant approached the scanner. The Velthian species resembled Earth's insects scaled up to human size, and their clicking gait had sent the cubs into defensive postures on previous days. But this time Razor only tensed slightly. The other 2 cubs, named Shimmer and Ghost by Mara, didn't even react. The merchant passed through the scanner without incident. A soft chime indicated clearance. Mara produced a small treat from her pocket and tossed it through a feeding slot in the barrier. Razor caught it midair, crunched it down, then returned to his sitting position. "Positive reinforcement," Mara explained. "Every time someone goes through the scanner and nothing bad happens, they get a reward. They're starting to associate the scanners with safety, not threat." Draal watched this display with a mixture of fascination and exasperation. Lieutenant Quinn, you do understand that you're training apex predators using techniques developed for, what did you call them in your reports? Dogs and cats and horses and dolphins. Mara stood up, brushing dust from her uniform. And children, Chief. The principle is the same across species. Fear comes from the unknown. Trust comes from consistency and patience. The council representatives are not patient beings. Then they can use the other entrance. Mara's tone hardened slightly, the steel beneath her warm exterior showing through. These cubs didn't ask to be orphaned. They didn't ask to imprint on a human. They're doing their best to adapt to a station full of aliens who smell wrong and sound wrong and move wrong. The least we can do is give them time to learn that not everything different is dangerous. Draal was silent for a long moment. His species valued efficiency above nearly all else, but even he couldn't deny the logic in the human's words. More importantly, he'd seen the reports. Krivith adults were formidable allies but terrible enemies. These cubs would one day be fully grown, and their loyalty to Lieutenant Quinn, and by extension to Gateway Station, could prove invaluable. How much longer? He asked finally. Mara turned back to watch the cubs. Razor had laid down now, his siblings following suit. Their eyes were still fixed on the scanners, but their posture had relaxed considerably. Maybe a week, she said. Maybe less. Razor's already starting to see the pattern. Once he's comfortable, the others will follow. And then we move on to the medical scanners. Then the transport pads. Then the cafeteria. Mara grinned. One scary thing at a time, Chief. That's how you build trust. Another delegate passed through the scanner. Another soft chime. Another treat for the watching cubs. Draal made a notation on his data pad, officially documenting this security accommodation for diplomatic purposes. As he walked away, he heard Lieutenant Quinn speaking softly to the cubs through the barrier, her voice carrying that strange human quality, something his species had no word for, but which the translation matrix approximated as gentle strength. Perhaps, Draal thought, this was why humanity had risen so quickly through the council ranks. They didn't just understand strength. They understood that sometimes the strongest thing you could do was sit on the floor with frightened children and teach them that the universe, despite all evidence to the contrary, could be trusted, one scanner at a time.